Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Life Pre-Race. We got Formula One, NASCAR, World Rally Championship on today's show. With me today, we have Ben Schneider, Joshua Burst from Joshua Burst Motorsport just finished up his coverage on the live stream, and Matthew Bro joining us today to discuss all the racing action. And a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, calling the show Mark, Robin, and David, the newest member, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You too can invest in the Grid Network monthly or through a one-time contribution through Buy Me a Coffee, and you can even buy a cup of coffee for your favorite on-air personality. Big thank you to everyone that contributed coffee for our team that did the Daytona 500 pre-race show a while back. And we encourage everyone in the chat room to comment. We'd love to share, display your comment. Dimas, one of our regulars, good to see you. Casey Campbell stopped by earlier. He is, of course, watching the Sebring 12 hours, and, of course, big race over there. We had that pre-race show earlier with Kobe and Casey for the Sebring 12 hours. Matthew, the other big race, I have to say, Formula One's back, Saudi Arabia, and it looks like it could be really easy for everyone to pick a winner with this race.
Absolutely. I feel like it's turning into supercars in a sense, but it's quite odd, Joe. I mean, we don't have a starting lineup yet because qualifying is just under an hour away for the 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We'd love to hear everyone watching today share their comments below on who they think will win the poll today. It's safe to say that most people are going to say the back-to-back world champion Max Verstappen. There's a few reasons why, not including the championship bar. Obviously, Verstappen was the fastest in both practices yesterday. He was the fastest today in final practice. And unless there is a mechanical issue or a driver error, he will most likely be on pole position. Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc had to take a 10-place grid penalty in the year's second race after having to replace a power unit on the car. Another driver that has seemingly been up front all season with the Red Bull so far, Checo, made a joke that he is the third Red Bull car. He's been up front in practice. He's been up front in qualifying. And then even 2 weeks ago race, Aston Martin's newest driver and two-time world champion Fernando Alonso. So starting with you, Joshua, does Ferrari or the 41-year-old Fernando Alonso have a shot at the front row or pole?
The Ferraris are so lost right now. They're still in Bahrain, so they're not going to be on pole position. They have been shocking all weekend long, 9th and 10th, even 11th place throughout the weekend as well. They've been struggling. For some reason, they can't hook the tyres up. Their long-run pace has been slow as well. Their short-run pace for the qualifyings have been miles and miles off the pace of the Red Bulls. So Ferrari, I think, are going to be lucky to get into Q3. I reckon at least one of them won't make it. I reckon Sainz will go through to Q3, and I reckon we'll see Leclerc fall out as well. But it's how Hamilton last year didn't qualify until Q2, didn't get into Q2 as well. And Dim saying about the safety changes, I'll go through that in just a second. But in terms of Fernando Alonso having a shot at pole position, I think that's a real possibility. He's been trading second and third places with him and Perez throughout the opening practice session. Verstappen has been top throughout all of them as well. And in the 6 practice sessions we've had so far this year, it's always been Verstappen, Perez, and Alonso in some order as well. It's a very unusual situation as well to have that. It's now the Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas of 2020 and 2021 falling back up again. So I reckon Verstappen will have pole. I reckon Alonso might be second and Perez down in third position. Dimas mentioned about the track changes. Yes, I've got them here in front of me because I was just finishing the F2 race. That's why I was a little bit late. A new painted curb at turn 3, steel plate removed at turn 4, exit steel curb removed at turn 5, replaced with a concrete beveled curb. So it sort of rocks in the middle. So if you go over it, the car judders. Turn 8, new alignment of wall to the old wall, so by 7.8 meters back. That's where we saw the accident for Mick Schumacher. That's changed as well. New as well. Safety Tech Pro barrier like we see like at the strips at Las Vegas Motor Speedway that got installed after the accident there in 2011. Indianapolis has it as well. It's the same type of situation. New Tech Pro as well, as I said, the exit 1011, rumble strip at the exit 2, painted curbs, removing the rumble strips as well. The exit the fastest straight corners, so it's now just paint on the track instead of breaking apart the suspension. Curbs have been moved around, and the big one, turn 22 as well. The DRS has changed as well. So remember last year, Leclerc and Verstappen breaking with each other to have a bit of DRS chicken, not working out this year. It's been moved now. The activation for DRS3 is 170 meters after turn 27, and the detection point for it is at the exit to turn 27. So there's literally 170 meters between the two at the last corner now. So they're the change to the track.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. I think, Red Bull's obviously the team to beat. I think Alonso might have a shot at the outside of the front row, like Josh was saying there, maybe P2, but I think Verstappen is very well set to, unless Red Bull has a reliability issue or something, take pole position and lead every lap and win the race. I think it was George Russell, actually, that was quoted as saying he thinks Red Bull haven't even shown their full potential yet. So, forget Ferrari. Obviously, they're, what can go wrong will go wrong with them. I'm going to continue saying that until I'm proven otherwise here. But I don't even think Aston Martin, as impressive as they've been with Fernando Alonso in particular to start the year, I think it's Red Bull that's going to be the favorite every single weekend from here on out until further notice.
I think I'm going to make this unanimous because right now, the way I see it, Red Bull, they're just a step ahead of everybody. And we know other teams are talking about they're going to have an updated version of their car at a future race. Well, Red Bull, they're still working on updating their car. So they're always going to be just that one step ahead. For Ferrari to really contend for the front row, Charles Leclerc has to put a perfect lap down. But it just does not seem that's going to be likely. It's hard to believe that Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, a year ago, when this announcement was made, I think a lot of us would not anticipate this kind of response from Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso so early in the season. But it's really entertaining to see what they could do. I think it's going to be, unless Checo doesn't have a good lap, I think it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2 in the front row. We have Adam in the chat room, Max V on the pole. He also believes it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2. And Casey Campbell, who of course is covering Sebring right now, caution out in the 12 hours with a 31 going around. So a lot going on in the motorsport world, and definitely we'll be following everything right here.
And then for that, I think Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll's been a surprisingly quick, I would argue as well, especially finishing, I believe he was 4th in free practice 3. So he might be someone up there. Obviously, I think we look at this Fernando Alonso situation and back when he went to McLaren a few years ago and talking about how you thought what he was going to do to switch the team around didn't really work out in terms of bringing that talent on board. But seemingly he's already done that, it feels like, and just already one race has passed in the Formula One season. But I don't know. It's so hard to bet against Red Bull. I can agree with that. I'm just going to make that unanimous. But as talking about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, it's two of them, so not many to really base our numbers off of. Only one driver, though, has had a podium in each of the Saudi and Arabian races. Can you guess? Probably Max Verstappen. But Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, and Lewis Hamilton all also have one podium here. All of those drivers were with either Mercedes or Ferrari at the time of the podium. So this kind of just follows base of what we've seen in the past few seasons. Everyone else, though, on the grid, not one podium finish here. And most of the drivers that finish in the top 10 start inside the top 10 of this Grand Prix. There, however, have been 4 drivers scoring points from starting outside the top 10. In 2021, we saw Daniel Ricciardo and Antonio Giovinazzi in 2021. And then in 2022, we saw Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. So Aston Martin, going back to them, has never had a car qualify better than 13th here. And they have never had a car score any points. That might likely change, though. So I'm going to start with you, Ben, on this one. Does Aston Martin get one or both cars in the top 10 of qualifying and possibly the race?
Well, we were just talking about them maybe being a surprise pick for the front row. So if we're going to go there, I think a top 10 is certainly attainable. This is a different Aston Martin team. This is a revived Fernando Alonso in terms of how strong he's been over the last several years and taking it up to another level this year with the car that Aston Martin seemed to have been able to give him. And even Lance Stroll, Matthew, like you were mentioning, I think he's been a very pleasant surprise to start this year as well. Not quite on the level of Fernando Alonso, but still dealing with some pain in his wrists, obviously, from the preseason accident and that whole deal there. I think certainly you've got to look at them in qualifying, and obviously if they can put a full race together, I don't see either of their cars falling out of the top 10 in the race either.
I'll agree with you on that fact as well, because it looks like we've got Alonso pretty much dialed in with that car for the entire season. So he's going to be on the long runs as well, going for race wins and possible world championships. Lance Stroll still coming back from that injury with the broken wrists and a broken toe as well. I was talking to Martin Brundle. I was just listening as well, because Rachel's currently talking with Toto Wolff in that interview. But Martin was talking with Lance yesterday as well for the feature on Sunday, where he said that his race boots were so tight on him as well, because they're a size smaller than what he is, so they can fit in the car, and he had a broken swollen toe, and he still managed to finish in sixth. So that's impressive. So I think as soon as we get that sorted out and he's back up to full strength, we'll easily see the two Astons working together to battle the Red Bulls. It was encouraging to see they were third and fourth as well in one of the practice sessions as well. And I think Lance is going to be up there too. I think Mercedes are going to be the bigger worry, so, and Ferrari, if they can even stay in the top 10. But I think this is a very good time for Aston Martin. After a couple trouble years when they switched over from Racing Point to Aston Martin, they now look like they're back in their swing of things and are going to be challenging regular for podiums and maybe even a race win if they get lucky and Red Bull break down one of these days.
Yeah, that's ultimately, I feel like, the end of it. And I'm going to read our comment from Robbie Adams. They need a stronger balance of power in Formula One. That's the beauty of oval racing, and nearly every driver on the track having a relatively even shot at the checkered flag. Also want to shout out, he is one of our Buy a Coffee members, so thank you, Robbie, once again. And I can argue, I feel like we're getting to that point in the Formula One era where we've actually, no, scratch that. We have seen it with Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes, Nico Rosberg just absolutely dominate this hybrid era. So I feel like this isn't really any different than what we have previously seen. But I feel like as a fan of the sport, you kind of want a little bit of variety. But like we said earlier, Red Bull just seemingly dominated. And it's a great thing to see Aston Martin once again being up front. Unfortunately, for those fans of four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, this didn't happen last year, unfortunately for him, but he got up there, scored some points. I think we could see both of these cars in the top 10. And then with Lance Stroll still recovering from an injury, if this really has that much of an effect, we might see him even challenging for podiums from what we have seen from the start of this season and how good that car really has been. But one team that Joshua mentioned as well is Mercedes. They are just not on the pace like they had hoped for. This is one of those tracks. It's fast, very high speed. And again, the field is a very close from first place to last place. In fact, like talking about free practice number 3, the grid. So if we ignore Red Bulls, from 3rd to 18th, we're all within less than a second of each other. So that just shows how quick and how close this really is. So I'm going to start with you for this one, Joshua, talking about Mercedes. Do you think we could see them fighting for position with midfield teams, or do you think we might see them break through?
At this stage, with the way the car is, Lewis Hamilton was describing yesterday in the World Feed Media after practice that the car's actually pretty much level with how bad the W13 was at the start of the year. So any evolution they made over the winter and towards the end of last season is completely gone. They've got another dog car, is what they've been calling it as well. And I think they are struggling. What we saw in Bahrain was akin to they had 28 hours of practice before that race, because we also had preseason testing there. So everybody had to take that first race with a little bit of pinch and salt, bar the Red Bulls and the Aston Martins, because we saw how good they were. We come to a new circuit for the first time when we only get 3 hours of practice, and now we're starting to see everybody struggle. Ferrari can barely make it in the top 10 in this race. Mercedes struggling too. Russell said in practice 2, this isn't good, we've got to change it. So the setup needed to change. We saw Lewis Hamilton as well, who this weekend already, he hasn't got Angela Cullen anymore as well. A mutual decision, I think, to part there. She wanted to go and do other things as well. That's another key member of Lewis's little team that he built up over the last 7 years has gone. James Vowell's gone over to Williams. James Allison left, but we now understand he might be coming back. Toto's still there, but Nicky, of course, sadly passed away. So there's a lot changing in the team. And now with Angela gone as well, Lewis is losing key people that he relies on to have his strengths. And I think he's going to have a lot more trouble fighting and keeping his spirits up. There's been a lot of rumors in the media. Is he going over to Ferrari? Is him and Leclerc going to do a swap? don't think that's going to happen. I've just heard from Toto Wolff in the interview with Rachel Brooks saying about how they know what's wrong with the car, they know where to go with it, but it's a question of it's just going to take a lot of time and a lot of development that they can't do in the cost cap. So the cost cap affecting Mercedes, and everybody's saying, well, it hasn't yet affected Red Bull. Just wait. This is development that was made early on in the season. Later on, by the time we leave the summer break and go into Netherlands, Italy, and the flyaway races start again in late September, we're going to see Red Bull start to struggle. Will it be too late for the title then? Possibly. So we're really in a mixed situation right now as what's going to happen and who's where. But Mercedes have got a long uphill battle to do. At the moment, I don't see them anywhere near the top 10 in regular points-paying positions. I do think they're going to be battling in the midfield, and I don't think they're going to win because Alpine was bad in Bahrain. They look amazing here in Saudi, and they are their closest rivals at this time going into quali.
Seems like you just knew what I was about to say about Alpine. They were looking really good this weekend so far, and I think I will not be surprised Pierre Gasly is going to be ahead of at least one of the Mercedes drivers. Which one? I don't know. We've seen what Lewis Hamilton can do at this track with a car that's not that great. This car, again, is not looking that great. George Russell, I think that's where Pierre Gasly could potentially finish ahead. But I just do not see the Mercedes in this track competing with Ferrari, with Red Bull, not even with Aston Martin. Maybe with Lance Stroll if he doesn't have a great qualifying lap, but I anticipate Lance Stroll will then try to work his way to the front. Overall, it is just not looking great for Mercedes. A lot of changes, as you brought up, going on within the team. I just feel like this is just one of those deals where you're so successful, and we see this in other sports, people will start taking members from that successful team to help build up their team. You can't keep everyone that long. Mercedes had a great run. Looks like it's going to be Red Bull. It's just now who can really step up to Red Bull's level. I do not see Mercedes doing that. Anything, I could see Alpine saying, hey, we could beat Mercedes this year, because that looks very real, considering Alpine, they beat McLaren last year. It's only natural. Well, if we could overtake the Mercedes, that's a huge accomplishment. Looks like Aston Martin is going to get around them, though, but still, that's a big motivator for that team.
Definitely. And I was talking backstage with you guys about Formula One Drive to Survive and how I'm just catching up back to it. Just got Netflix not too long ago, and I believe I'm in season 2. But discussing this kind of reminds me of Haas versus Renault in terms of, do we see Aston Martin maybe replacing Mercedes in the top 3 and Mercedes falling down to becoming one of those Haas or Renault teams? So it's tough. I mean, when you have one of the greatest drivers of all time and you're still not being able to produce, same with like Fernando Alonso McLaren with Sebastian Vettel and Aston Martin, not being able to get up there, it makes you worry with all the changes going on that maybe Lewis has hinted at retirement in a few years, but could that be coming sooner? Could he be doing a team swap one last time? We're not entirely sure, but with the talent level too with this team, I think we saw what George Russell was capable of coming from a Williams and then being able to produce almost instantly in a Mercedes. But now I feel like that gap between his Williams and this Mercedes isn't as much as we thought it was going to be. But yeah, so that's how I think they could be fighting for position. Unfortunately, with this W14, you don't know if they're going to be running 5th or if they're going to be running 16th. Like we were talking like backstage again, we were discussing all these things. But to end that, I want to just mention that qualifying is now less than an hour away. I believe we're at like 40 minutes from now. So Joshua has his watch along later tonight. Make sure you check that out. And before we let you go, Joshua, we need you to share your pick of winners, and we encourage you watching to comment on who will win each race. We have 2 of them that are still ready. We have NASCAR Formula One. We want you guys to get on the leaderboard and see if you can gain ground on Edward from Formula E Zone, because seemingly it doesn't seem like we are gaining. So hopefully we can have people from Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, come join us. So Joshua, who do you believe will win the Formula One race, and who do you believe will win the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta?
That guy. He's going to win the race tomorrow. No doubt about it. Max Verstappen. He'll win the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. I think it'd be close, though, between him and Perez. I think they're in for a battle as well. But I think Max Verstappen will win tomorrow. I did want to say Perez, but I think Perez might get pole instead tonight. He was looking a bit good, and I think we're going to have a race win for Max. And I was actually looking through the stats, guys, a few minutes ago. Nobody just noticed me looking down to pick my NASCAR picker winner. The NASCAR.com has picked 4. So it's Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, Eric Jones, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick. Sorry, it's 5. Can't count. And looking at that, I'm just trying to think who's actually done it. But I've got to be honest, Ryan Blaney, it's stats here. 5 has led laps in 5 of the last 6 Atlanta races, 85 laps in total. Knows how to go around here, and it's been quite good this season. So I'll go Ryan Blaney to win. Although, as Ben will probably say later on, I'm not very happy the fact that Christopher Bell is running the Cup Series. In fact, it's just becoming a running joke now, where Ben puts not happy about this either, and I just put you already know what I want as ending, and I just can't do it. That's an encore rant, though, as well on Monday. And we had a great Formula 2 sprint, actually, and that's something to talk about on Monday. And I'm hoping we're going to have a great feature tomorrow. And the qualifying, getting underway soon, looks absolutely fantastic, guys, because we know Red Bull are going to be at front. But in terms of who's going to be the supplies eliminations from qualifying, it could be Ferrari, it could be Mercedes. So there's a real stake here that this could be a qualifying that could define the championship run. So it's very exciting. Looking forward to it.
Well, Josh, we'll see you on Encore, of course, on Monday, but I just want to bounce off of that real quick. I think we need to start counting, because now what are we up to now? Byron's running the truck race in North Wilkesboro. Bell is running the truck race at North Wilkesboro. I'm very surprised that NASCAR is even allowing that, considering what they're the precedent that they set with the Chicago Street Course and a couple of other new tracks over the last several years regarding Cup drivers in the lower series. So I must admit, it is sapping some of the hype away from me in regards to the truck race. They're having a couple of these Cup guys in the lower series. And for anybody watching, this is proof. It's not just a Kyle Busch thing. It's a Cup driver thing. Maybe a Kyle Busch thing for some people, but for us, we like consistency here on Grid Network. So we're going to stay consistent no matter who the Cup driver is. We're not a fan of it.
No, we're not.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just looking through that Twitter thread. Actually, I think it would have been like when I woke up today, seeing Ben's original Chase Elliott one, and then not a fan of this, and then seeing Joshua's replies for each one, whether it was Bell, Byron. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more. Not many on, I think it's mainly the Chevrolet guys, honestly, from what we have seen. But now, I mean, Christopher Bell's obviously Toyota for Hattori. But yeah, and before we throw it to NASCAR, I want to thank you to Robbie Adams for buying us yet another coffee here on Grid Network. Appreciate him. He is Adam Stevens. He is a part of a racing league I am in, so I appreciate the support. Nazrak, I appreciate the support from everyone here. Once again, thank you to all our Buy Me a Coffee, all our Patreon people, really helping us continue this Grid Network, continuing what we all love to do here. So want to thank Robbie Adams once again for buying us a coffee.
Big thank you to Robbie for the coffee, and of course to Joshua for coming on right after his live stream, getting ready for qualifying. So we'll go ahead and let him go, and we're going to talk about the NASCAR Cup Series at Atlanta Motor Speedway for the Ambetter held 400-mile race. And William Byron, he is looking to be the first driver since Kyle Larson in 2021 to win 3 in a row. Of course, last year with the new car, very competitive, very hard for anyone to get 2 in a row. Kevin Harvick did it last year, though. Of course, William Byron became the next driver to do that this year. But this race is like a mini super speedway. This isn't the Atlanta before, where you have to really save your tires with the old asphalt, have a good handling car, where you saw drivers like Kevin Harvick could just dominate this race. This is a super speedway type deal where you're going to have just about everyone all packed up like you see at Daytona, Talladega. So overall, Matthew, starting with you, is William Byron the favorite? Or like Talladega, there is no favorite. It's just as long as your car starts, you got a shot.
I think yes and no. I think this is actually difficult because, I mean, William Byron's been on a stretch that's truly been incredible, something we had not seen since Kyle Larson 2021. And I remember, we'll scratch that because obviously there have been multiple time winners like Kevin Harvick back and back. But I was actually at the Pocono doubleheader when Kyle Larson was going for his 4th and then blew a tire in the corner that allowed Alex Bowman to win that race. That was my first ever NASCAR Cup Series race to be at, so that was kind of fun. But in terms of favorites, looking at the results, you would assume, I think, Chevrolet, but talking about like with William Byron and Hendrick with that huge penalty that came down on all of them, I don't know if it's really going to have any effect at all because granted the cars that they ran during the race did not have the modified hood louvers anyway. So it's a tough decision. But like I'm watching qualifying like in the background, and out of the top 7, 6 of them are Ford drivers at the moment for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta. So maybe there's going to be some favorites that switch the gap, whatever like that. But I think Chevrolet might be one. Couple drivers to look out for. I think the Trackhouse Racing drivers have been up there. Both of them have finished in the top 6 at both of these new Atlanta races. And then another driver I would be watching out for is Eric Jones. He hit the wall, I believe, in qualifying, but he finished 4th here and 13th here. So those are a couple guys I might consider those lowball favorites that we don't discuss that much. But I think you can't really base your data from Atlanta pre-2022 because it's really a completely different surface, completely different track at the end of the day. But to answer your question, I think you can say he might be a favorite, William Byron, because of the dominance he's put on. Obviously, the point standings don't show that anymore because he dropped from like 3rd, I believe, to 24th, something like that. But it's going to be an interesting one. I think we're going to see more of the latter of the question. That I think it's going to be more pack racing, and we might see someone shock the world.
Well, another thing you have to remember is obviously the morale is very down at Hendrick Motorsports right now based on the penalties that were just issued earlier this week. So that may play a factor into it as well. But then again, Hendrick is a team filled with professionals. I'm sure they're ready to put this behind them and go out and continue to win races like they've done with William Byron these last couple of weekends here. I suppose Byron's potentially maybe a favorite. You can always look at certain drivers that have had more success on super speedways than others. But, then again, we've only been going here to this layout a couple of times. It's really a brand new track, like you were saying, Matthew. So I think it's going to be kind of hard to predict a winner. We're going to do our best here at the end of the show. And I tweeted it out. I had to double check and make sure I'm staying consistent because I know I tweeted it out earlier this week. But I'm certainly going with a surprise winner. I think a lot of people might be as well. So we'll see what happens.
Surprise winner, I think it's very real at this track. We nearly saw it last year with LaJoie. Wouldn't surprise me. Comment in the chat room. Does the lower morale make that team hungry? And I guess, Ben, I'll throw that to you.
I think it depends on how you. I mean, obviously, you can't change what happened in the past, and the penalties have been issued at this point. And there's, I suppose maybe they can appeal it and get it reduced at the very least. But I think it's very rare that we see appeals actually be successful, especially for a penalty like this. NASCAR has made it clear you don't mess around with those source parts of a next-gen car. So I don't expect too much to change there. But I think, it depends on how you react to that and how you use that to go forward, whether you use it as motivation or whether you let it knock yourself down and then keep you down. It's going to all depend on how Hendrick can react this weekend. Now, if they have a good weekend and they go and sweep the top 4 spots or something, then obviously that'll send a message. If they even if it's not their fault, obviously, it's like a mini super speedway now. If they get caught up in a couple of big ones, if you will, then I think that could be something that shifts the momentum in the other direction going forward as we get into the heart of the season here. But again, it's very hard to predict going to this track. There's a lot of wild cards, plus the fact that, like I said, we've only done 2 races here, so it's going to be very hard to predict.
It's going to be very hard to predict. And one of the things, too, it's something else where a team, after a penalty, morale's low, you try to rebound. But, Matthew, it sounds like right now qualifying, the 400 cars don't seem to be right now, at least, looking to be in the top 10. Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah, so on my iPad, of course, like the moment you say it, it switches to commercial. So I love that. Talk about Fox Sports and all that stuff. So it looked like William Byron was either 9th or 10th in terms of my stream coverage. It could be different with the delay, but the rest of the Hendrick cars that have gone from what I have seen were Bowman and Josh Berry. They were both, I think, 15th or worse. The Fords are just absolutely taking off today. I think they're out of the 10 in the top 10, I think 8 of them are Ford drivers at the moment. So definitely like that. But in terms of, like, if I can comment on Robbie Singh as well, I think this does make Hendrick Motorsports more hungry in terms of, you've heard all these comments going along. But by the way, like Chad Knaus even said that they modified the part to make it fit. So he admitted kind of like what we'll be talking about Denny Hamlin later about that whole thing. But in terms of making them hungry, there's been a lot of comments about Hendrick Motorsports as haulers how they line up in owner points, being next to Colleague, being next to Legacy Motor Club, being back there. I feel like they're taking a little bit of offense to that. And I think we'll see, because like Robbie has says in this comment, they have been dominant so far this season, and they won even without the modifications. So I think they're going to show we're still the best. We're still one of the best teams in NASCAR, how dominant we have been. So as in Hendrick Motorsports. So I think that's what we might see out of them. Could I see them all contending for a win? Like Ben said, absolutely. It wouldn't shock me if we saw a 1, 2, 3, 4 Hendrick Motorsports finish. But yeah, right now in qualifying, it's not looking too hot for either the Chevrolets or Hendrick Motorsports. And I think even the Toyotas are doing worse at the moment from what I have seen. So it looks like it might be a 4-day in qualifying, but that could change tomorrow.
And the thing is, with qualifying like a super speedway, you got to be at times lucky with these super speedways to pack, be in the right place at the right time, because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're caught up in somebody's crash. If this was a track, say Martinsville, or a track where we know Hendricks are really good at, and they came here with a 1 through 4 finish, okay, they sent a statement. But even if they get caught up in somebody's mess, I feel like it's still not going to be truly reflective of the morale, but still, they have a mountain to climb. And I think that's really interesting, going from the front where your haulers park with the big boys of the motorsports, NASCAR, to Legacy, Colleague, and of course, Justin Haley, negative 41 points, just really unusual. He would love to get a win here. Like Talladega, the big packs, if you work the draft right, you could be up towards the front. And one driver that we always anticipate up front at Daytona, at Talladega, Denny Hamlin, another driver that has a penalty because on actions detrimental. Denny admitted he took out Ross Chastain. He knew he was going to get passed by a bunch of folks. Russell was on the outside, and he just said, "You're coming with me." They had a long talk. He said on his podcast, NASCAR did not like it. So now, after that, where he said initially he wasn't going to appeal, now he is appealing. He said it was hard racing and there was no manipulation in the results. Ben, do you believe Denny has a shot of winning this appeal?
I mean, this is just beautiful, guys. This is a beautiful moment. This is beautiful irony. He names his podcast "Actions Detrimental," and now he gets a penalty from NASCAR for actions detrimental to stock car racing. I think what Denny Hamlin has with this podcast is great. I think he's a very important voice in the sport. I love it. He speaks his mind. He's open. He's honest, and that he's going to keep it real with you, right? He's going to speak what's on his mind, and he doesn't care how the fans react. But at the same time, I mean, you say you weren't going to appeal, and now you say you are going to appeal for something that you openly admitted you were doing. Good luck with that, man. That's all I'm going to say there. I don't see it happening. I'm with you, Robbie. I think there's as my old middle school gym coach or a gym teacher said, slim to none and slim's out of town. That's the chances that Denny Hamlin has of winning this appeal.
Yeah. And I think all of us here still have a better chance of being ahead of Justin Haley in the standings after this week than Denny Hamlin winning the appeal, because he admitted, I mean, Denny Hamlin's one of the best I think we've ever seen in the sport, one of the most important voices, especially now with Kevin Harvick retiring. I think Denny Hamlin can possibly be moving into that role along with those guys like Kyle Busch, being the veteran of the sport, knowing what's going on. But when Denny Hamlin literally had actions detrimental and admitted to wrecking Ross Chastain, if you watch the he kept hitting him after he hit the wall. I don't know why Denny Hamlin was just that angry. And we were even discussing the race last week at Phoenix, talking about like Chastain and Hamlin were in the top 10. What happened? Because there was like no camera coverage. And I remember looking at the unofficial results, seeing them like either 22nd, 23rd, 24th, one of those spots. Like, what happened? And then watching the in-car camera, then watching Denny Hamlin. You gave Denny Hamlin the microphone, Dale Jr., and now he's admitting to things that are going on. So not a great look for Hamlin, but one thing you got to respect about him, obviously, is he will speak his mind, but he really pulled the Uno reverse card out in terms of saying, yeah, I wrecked him. And then he's like, I'm going to appeal this. I mean, on the bright side of this whole situation, his podcast probably has more viewers now, but on the downside, he's down 25 points and $50,000. So that's how I look at it as well. So I agree with both Robbie. I agree with you, Ben. No chance. No. And if it is, we'll have to eat crow like we have many times on this show.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the question, right? Are you willing to sacrifice 25 points for the extra revenue that more listeners coming to your podcast brings in? Maybe he can use that extra revenue to pay any fines that he's going to receive. I don't know what he was thinking here, but maybe he's playing 4D chess or something, and all of us are just going to be trying to catch up. But I don't see him winning this appeal at all. I think he's got a 0% chance of doing it. But we've had to eat crow before. I had to eat crow 2 weeks ago when Fernando Alonso took that Aston Martin to a podium. So we'll see what happens.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Robbie brings up about the extra shot down to the straight as well that you mentioned, Matt. Yeah, you admitted on the podcast you did this, and now you're going to try to say, oh, it was just hard racing. No, you said you let go of the wheel and you're coming with me. If you're let go of the wheel, that's not hard racing. That's deliberately going up the track, not to improve your position, but to slow down somebody. I just can't believe this. It's like, it was going to be interesting. When Actions Detrimental came out, I thought this is going to be a lot of fun. See what Danny has to say each and every week. And already, less than 5 races in, I feel like now that's really crossing the line where you admit something, you're going to get a penalty for it. But just
he said he's making an appeal to the people too. So I guess we'll have to listen Monday and see what he means by that.
It's going to be really interesting to see how Denny Hamlin handles this. And then I think now he's going to get a lot of folks listening to the next podcast to see what he has to say after this race weekend. And, of course, the appeal. Atlanta Motor Speedway, the mini super speedway, as some folks are calling it, the high-degree banking corners. We could see a surprise winner. We talked briefly about some of the surprise winners that almost came out of this race last year, including Corey LaJoie in that number 7. He's off to a pretty good start this year, doing well in the points as Corey LaJoie. I would not be surprised if he's up to the front. And then you have AJ Allmendinger. Not exactly a great start to the season. He'll love to work the draft, the pack, get to the front, get a win in the playoffs. And Justin Haley, his teammate, as I mentioned, negative points. Ty Gibbs, he's starting to turn this season around, but the other Rookie of the Year contender, Noah Gragson, further back in the points. Matthew, which driver do you feel coming into Atlanta is going to be in a must-win situation, knowing that after this race weekend, the next track to have this kind of parity is Talladega?
I don't think I can pick just one because I feel like it's honestly from what we have seen so far, I feel like it's the majority of the field that is outside the top 20 in points besides the Hendrick guys that are really in certain scenarios where it's must win. Like there's probably 5-6 races a season where it seems like anyone can win, and this is one of them. Obviously, Corey LaJoie is a big one. Finished, I believe, 5th in the first race here, and then got hit by Chase Elliott's block or whatever had happened in the last race. So he's one of those guys up there. Justin Haley, I feel, for the rest of this season is now in a must situation because there's 36, I guess, chartered entries. Justin Haley's technically 43rd in points. So and then if you count every single person that exists on this planet, 7 billion, whatever, we're all ahead of Justin Haley. And we might not qualify for the points, but that's how far really back he is, unfortunately. So I think the Kaulig cars, AJ Allmendinger hasn't been as strong, I feel like, as we thought he would be to start the season. Unfortunately, he's been caught up in multiple incidents. Not really any of his doing, unfortunately. So the Kaulig cars are definitely up there. Harrison Burton's first career top 10 was at this track in Atlanta. So I think he's somebody who's been back there that really needs to be in must-win situations. But I feel like for the rest of the season, the guys who need the biggest are probably the other Spire Motorsports car. I think Ty Dillon is the driver in all of NASCAR that's really in a must-win situation. I believe Pastrana is still ahead of Ty Dillon in points in terms of Ty Dillon only racing or in 4 races to Travis Pastrana's 1, and then other various drivers who have done 1-offs, 2-offs. So Ty Dillon for that Spire Motorsports car. You see their success last season here with Corey LaJoie. Hopefully Ty Dillon can come out and repeat what his teammate has done, because Ty Dillon has proven in different series he can be up front. He hasn't really closed the deal as much, but in terms of the 77 team, this new opportunity for him, he's got to be that driver in my mind that really, really is in a must-win situation.
Yeah, I think Kaulig should be grateful that it's only Justin Haley and that AJ Allmendinger's not back there with him on negative points. Obviously Hendrick had all of their cars affected. I guess Chase Elliott wasn't affected on the driver's side of things. So, how do you like that? Chase Elliott saved 100 points by breaking his leg. I guess that's not the most conventional way to do things, but maybe that's a silver lining in his injury here. And we certainly, of course, in all seriousness, continue to wish him the best as he recovers. But in terms of drivers in must-win situations, I think those are the two teams you look at. You look at colleague, obviously, Justin Haley being so far back in the negative right now. He's already essentially in a must-win situation at this point. He'd have to basically finish in the top 5 every race from here on out to get back to a point where it wouldn't be a must-win. And if he's running that well, he's bound to win a couple of races anyway. So I think he's in a must-win situation. The Spire cars, obviously, Corey LaJoie came very close here last year. Ty Dillon has had a very rough start to the season. You'd like to see him try to turn it up a little bit and use this race as an opportunity. I think Spire can certainly do that. This is one of the few opportunities a year where we really talk about them as a contender to win, because they have had some success on the super speedways before. Colleagues, current driver Justin Haley, of course, shocked the world in 2019 at Daytona with the assistance of a Lightning. So I think those are the teams you have to look out for. I'm especially keeping my eye on AJ Allmendinger, obviously, because I think everybody was very excited to see what he could do based on the strong runs he had in his part-time Cup season last year. But he hasn't had that same level of success to start the year. Granted, he has been in a couple of incidents. He did get a top 10 at Daytona, which was nice to see, and continue that streak of being running at the finish every year he's run that race. But aside from that, it's been a rougher start to the year than I think most people were expecting. We'll see if he can use this track. Of course, he won here, very different configuration, very different circumstances, but this was where he got his first ever oval win in NASCAR in the Xfinity Series in 2020, right after the comeback from the COVID break and the pandemic break there. So maybe he can use that as a positive memory to boost his momentum this weekend and have a good run, but we'll just have to wait and see. Like we've been saying all show, very difficult to predict this race.
Very difficult to predict this race. And one thing I think is going to be very difficult to predict, what's going to happen with the pit stops. One of the unique things they've done, you are entering pit road when you're entering turn 3. So you're going around turn 3, turn 4. This is going to be a really long pit entry, a lot of potential for mistakes of speeding into pit road. If you cut the corner a little too quickly, it'll look like you're speeding. You're going to get a penalty, and that's going to be a really long penalty, especially under green flag conditions. But I have to ask, do we anticipate we'll have a lot of green flag pit stops? Because one of the big things, sometimes we see just races like Talladega, Daytona, when the crashes occur, the pit stops happen, you try to stay out. You don't have the tires wearing out like the old Atlanta. Do you see this longer pit road being a big factor, Ben?
Well, it's going to depend on how clean we keep the racing here. I think that's the biggest part of it, especially with stage racing now. Obviously, you have 2 planned cautions in the middle of the race, so I don't know how many opportunities we're going to get for green flag pit stops where the entire field's coming down pit road. Maybe we'll see them, maybe we won't. But I think it's inevitable at some point, somebody's going to have a tire go down or, a fender rub or something and need to make an unscheduled green flag pit stop. So I'm sure we'll see somebody utilize this and have to come down into the pits under green here at some point with all the racing that we've got going on this weekend. But yeah, it's a very interesting configuration here. I think some people, when they first saw it, were maybe a little bit concerned about the safety aspect of it, trying to slow down that much on the backstretch for the entire pack coming by. But I don't know. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's such a foreign concept in many respects. I think we're going to have to wait and see it in action before we give a true, honest opinion on it and really get to see what it looks like in actuality.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to see a lot of this hand out the window. I'm coming down pit road. I think the more we see these changes to this track, the more we're trying to, I guess, adapt it into a super speedway race. But we see a lot of people complaining, oh, at this track, we're going to go 1-2 laps down. When you look at most of the short tracks here and like even the length of pit road, whether it's Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond, if you green flag pit stops for the most part, put cars multiple laps down anyway. It's just, it might be more difficult here at Atlanta, now considered almost a super speedway, to recover those laps. But with the 2 given cautions with the stage 1 and stage 2 break, I don't know how much of effect it will have because of all drivers being able to get either a wave around, being able to get the lucky dog. So I think this might be a factor in the race. I think one of the worst things NASCAR has done is not allowing them to practice this because that's really not smart. We complained about the whole Daytona 500 practice. We saw like guys like Connor Daly, Chandler Smith at the start of like the qualifying practice not even being able to get their car going. So this, I think, will create another issue with NASCAR and their whole practice thing. Granted, it's been raining, yes, but at the same time, you have to look at it and be like the safety of the drivers. And then if I can give a quick qualifying update to those 8 Fords out of the top 10, Kyle Larson is currently out of the 5 drivers last in the top. There's only been 5 going, and Christopher Bell spun out. So the only 2 non-Fords to make the final round were Christopher Bell with Joe Gibbs Racing, Kyle Larson with Hendrick Motorsports. Larson put down the slowest time so far, and Christopher Bell spun out. So his lap either didn't count or he'll have to start 10th. So that's a fun fact. Ford, I don't know if that will be a record. All the same manufacturer starting 1 through 8. It could happen. I assume it might happen maybe after the end of this show because of due to commercial stuff. I just want to throw that out there, guys. Sorry.
Ford again. We've seen this at Talladega. I remember when Stewart Haas Racing had all 4 Ford just link up, dominate that race. When they're trying to do the same thing, let's link up. And especially if you have a long green flag run, no pit stops needed, that could put everybody that's not a Ford in a bad spot if you have all the Fords perfectly timing their pit stops and just pulling away from everyone. It's going to be a really interesting race. Atlanta Motor Speedway has been hosting NASCAR since 1960, but of course, 3 different configurations. The original configuration up to 1997, and then, of course, 97. That's with the introduction of the tri-oval layout we have. But then last year, the new banking to make this a mini super speedway. Overall, we've seen a lot of NASCAR's best drivers race here. And of course, this is NASCAR's 75th season. Back in 1998, NASCAR introduced the 50 greatest drivers. Here is that list from 1998 from NASCAR. The drivers in yellow have won here in Atlanta. Of course, a lot of them on the prior configurations. Some of them with the 97 up, and some of them with the original, where it was a true oval. The back straight and the front straight were equal. In fact, today's back stretch, that was the front stretch. Just picture a pit wall a little higher up before you get to the banking of the straightaway. And that's how you had the old configuration. Last weekend, we gave our hypothetical 75 greatest drivers, naming essentially throughout the year 25 drivers to join this list. We added Jimmy Johnson, Kevin Harvick, and Kyle Busch based on their performances at Phoenix historically since 1999 and what they've done in the series. When we come to Atlanta, Jimmy Johnson leads all drivers with the most wins here at 5. Second most, Kurt Busch at 4. Ben, starting with you, based off past winners here at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which drivers would you nominate to be considered for a hypothetical NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers?
Well, I see we've got a list of 15 here in front of us. Now, forgive me, I'm usually not on the pre-race shows. I'm happy to be filling in for Kobe today as he's working on Sebring coverage, but I'm not sure exactly. I guess you guys were doing it where you took the 50 greatest from 98 and you're just adding 25 more over the last 25 years. I personally, so Matthew Owens, of course, friend of the show, runs USRN. He asked some of his friends to put together a 75 greatest drivers of all time list here. And I didn't follow that philosophy. I like to think that, sometimes as the sport continues to evolve, competitors continue to evolve, sometimes we might see more than 25 drivers in the last 25 years that would be among the 75 greatest. So I didn't even bother looking at the 50 greatest list from 98. I just took the 75 that I thought belonged there. And I can tell you, looking at this list that I have in front of me of these Atlanta winners, I think it's easier to actually tell you who I did not have in my top 75 list that I put together for Matthew just a couple of months ago. So I'll tell you, William Byron was not on there. Ryan Blaney was not on there, and Jerry Nadeau was not on there. Now, Jerry Nadeau, of course, only won that one race here at Atlanta. His career was cut short due to that accident at Richmond in the 01 car. So, he was a great talent. I think his career was cut too short. I think he, didn't necessarily get the big breaks that he deserved, but you can't play the what-if game that much. So I don't think Jerry Nadeau belongs in the 75 greatest drivers list as much as I'm a fan of his and love his story and wish him well. I'm not going to put him in that group. Byron and Blaney are a little bit different case, obviously, because they're still obviously on the much younger side. They've only won a handful of cup races each, so there's certainly potential for them to continue to climb that ladder and be in that top 75 at some point. But just looking at some of these other drivers here, you've got Cup champions Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, and then guys that won 25 to 30 races: Carl Edwards, Dale Earnhardt Jr. When you look at obviously Denny Hamlin, I think arguably at this point maybe the greatest Cup driver to never win a Cup championship. Bobby Labonte, another champion on here. Casey Kane, I think a very underrated driver, especially early on in his Evernham years. Those are all guys that I found a place for somewhere in the top 75. Byron and Blaney, I think, still have a little bit of work to do to climb that ladder. I know some people with The Athletic put Blaney very high up in their top 75 list. So I know there are certainly some people that think he's there already. But for me, I'd like to see a few more Cup wins for him at the very least, and maybe a true championship run before I put him in that same group.
Yeah, I've been joking around with Joe these previous couple weeks. I think Grid Network, we should put together like a Mount Rushmore of our top 4, top 5 NASCAR drivers of all time. Because I think from what I hear from this show, from all our shows, I think we're all going to have some different people up there. So I think that's awesome to see. And one person who definitely wouldn't put Ryan Blaney up there is Kyle Petty, but I'm not going to really joke about that. I'm going to go back to the list. Obviously, Ben Affer mentioned it about how some of these drivers who have won, I think a lot of these drivers have more talent than maybe some of the guys you see. I was like in the mirror right here. Some of those drivers you might see. I think a lot of the guys who have won here previously might be more talented. Kurt Busch, I would argue, is probably, in terms of Atlanta victories here, going to be Hall of Famer, but I might leave that to others. I'm actually going to go the route of Brad Keselowski would be my nomination. He is 12th all-time in NASCAR wins in the top 3 series combined. He has a Cup championship. He has an Xfinity championship, 35 Cup wins, 39 Xfinity wins, had a blistering fast lap. He is going to be somewhere in the top 5 for qualifying, along with all of Team Penske right now is 1, 2, 3. That is amazing. And then obviously Brad Keselowski was Team Penske. But I feel like we don't give Brad the respect anymore because of how talented he really was with his stretch when he was in the 2 car, even winning in the 09 car. And then just his fall off these past couple seasons, obviously getting into a new role, driver, owner. We don't really give him the respect I feel Brad Keselowski deserves. So that's why he would be my nominee. He won here back in, I believe it was 2017 and 2019 off the top of my head. So with Brad being a 2-time winner here, I think absolutely he should be my nominee. Obviously, Cup champion, Xfinity championship. Only has 1 truck win. Not that that matters, but where that brings into the debate about like Matt Crafton. And then the 75th top drivers of all time do truck wins. Is it the NASCAR Hall of Fame or is it NASCAR Cup Hall of Fame? I'm just rambling on, but that's Brad Keselowski will be my nominee, and then Kurt Busch will probably be one of them as well.
Yeah, and if I could just bounce off of that, Matthew, you bring up Keselowski's Xfinity career as well, and that's always the comment that I come back with, reminding people, especially in light of Herschel McGriff going in this year and people not being as familiar with his story, it's very often worth a reminder. It's not the Cup Hall of Fame, it's the NASCAR Hall of Fame. When you look at Brad Keselowski's Xfinity career, he's 4th on the all-time wins table with 39 wins, and he won a championship there. In my opinion, if that's all anybody ever did, that puts you in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Maybe not first ballot, but that is a Hall of Fame Xfinity career, no doubt. And again, it's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, not just the Cup Series. You have to take all of NASCAR sanctioned racing into consideration, and then you throw in his 30 some odd Cup wins that he has, and is obviously a Cup champion as well in 2012 with Penske. Brad Keselowski is no doubt going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he no doubt belongs on any 75 greatest drivers list, in my opinion.
Brad Keselowski, definitely one of the drivers I think should be on a 75 greatest drivers list. The driver I'm going to go with, based off Atlanta and what he's done career-wise with Cup Series championship, plenty of wins. Unfortunately, out of the car this year due to injury, Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch has done a lot in a long career that's back in 2001, the NASCAR Cup Series, when it was sponsored by Winston. Gone through several teams from Roush, Penske. We know the drama he had with Dr. Jerry Punch, lost his ride, came back with Haas. After Haas, Dan, of course, his current role where he is now with 2311. Just a great career by Kurt Busch, and I think a lot of folks who at first probably were not the biggest fans of Kurt Busch, especially when he was much younger, I think became more appreciative of everything he had done for the sport. A couple of comments in the chat room from Robbie Penske, I think referring to you, Matthew, about that. So checking the Penske louvers is going to be really something to see all these Fords up front, what they could do tomorrow at the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, there's another race going on today and tomorrow, World Rally Championship, and a dramatic start to today's race. Esapekka Lappi was the leader entering today. He had the lead all day yesterday. Optonic was just slow, was off the pace the second day. But today, first stage of the day, the 11th stage of the rally, big time disaster. Lappi, while leading, gets into the ditch, gets the car out of the ditch, but just the car is then spun around backwards into a power pole. Remember, with World Rally Championship, they are racing on public roads that are closed off for the day for them to run their stages. So that's why there was a power pole there. The power pole came crashing down. There was a fire in the car. Thankfully, both he and his co-driver were okay, but that ended the 11th stage. Red flag came out. So now Sebastian Ogier, who a lot of folks have picked for pick a winner, takes the lead just off that. We're going to have a full recap tomorrow on World Rally Championship and everything that has occurred since we went on the air. And Matthew, I mentioned Ogier pick a winner. I think just about everyone for World Rally picked him. Now it's time to see who we pick for the last two races of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I might have went with Rovanpera. I don't know if Ben did as well. I think we might have been.
I believe I did. Yeah.
So we might have been two of the few. He's kind of like one of those guys too. I feel either if it's Sebastian or if it's Rovanpera is going to get the job done. But it's time for everyone's favorite game, except it seems like not Joshua's favorite game at this point, but pick a winner. We have a couple races already going on, currently covering that with Kobe and Casey with Sebring, and then the World Rally Championship as well. If you look at the standings really quick, you see Edward from Formula E Zone is kicking our butts. I am technically tied for second with Kobe. I can't complain being at 4. Unfortunately, one of my wins got taken away. Thanks, SVG. Thanks, 888. But we're all having some fun here. But we have Formula One at Saudi Arabia. We have NASCAR at Atlanta. I will start with you for this one, Ben. Who would you pick for both of these races? Or actually, let's go with Formula One first. Who would you pick for Formula One?
Well, I picked what I think almost everybody's picking. It's the guy that's driving the best car, the best driver, the defending world champion, 2-time defending world champion now, Max Verstappen. I think it's very difficult to pick against him until further notice on any Formula One track. I'm going to go with him for my F1 pick this weekend.
I have to go the same way. I like to think that the Saudi Arabia track could produce good close racing, but I just do not see Checo fighting it with Max for the win. I don't see Fernando Alonso being at that level. He could probably finish ahead of Checo, but not Max Verstappen. It's going to be Max Verstappen getting this one.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with I'm just playing. Why would I do that? A Red Bull, Max Verstappen, obviously, until that point that he does not win or something happens, like Ferrari to that team. I'm going to pull like an SVG. I'm going to continue going with Verstappen and our very own Kobe Lambert as well. Verstappen, hopefully we all get the move up a little bit. But yeah, once again, I know Mr. Robbie Adams commented his pick of winners. Make sure you guys, if you're following along, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, comment your pick a winner. We even have some Instagram ones up on the leaderboard as well as TikTok. And then, like Robbie said, Verstappen and then William Byron going for the 3-peat. That could be something we haven't seen in a few years. But then so we talk Formula One. Let's talk NASCAR here after just witnessing all Fords qualify in the top 8. That's just something I don't think we've seen. Penske have 1, 2, 3. Fords are 1 through 8. So I'm going to start with you again, Ben. I don't know if that changes your mind from your pick a winner. I saw it on Twitter, but who do you have winning the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta?
Well, it's March after all, so get ready for your playoff brackets to be busted. Corey LaJoie is going to earn redemption for his very near win last time around here at Atlanta. I'm picking him to close the deal this time with Spire Motorsports and get the job done. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I don't know how he was in position to do it last year. it's a very unpredictable race, and LaJoie is a great super speedway racer. Now got a mini super speedway here. I think he'll somehow, some way, find a way to earn a little bit of redemption for last year and get that win.
We saw Kobe commented, Brad Keselowski. I think I'm going to go with the Ford. I think not a lot of people are anticipating to be up front, but I think have a good run, be up front, stay out of trouble. You got a shot. Austin Cindric, the number 2, he is my pick for pick a winner.
Yeah. I was just going to mention, first career Atlanta front row start for Austin Cindric, also finished, I believe, 3rd here in the second race. Now, as much as I want to pick a Ford driver, I really think Chevrolet is going to continue their dominance, starting the year with 5 straight wins with their manufacturer, 7 back in 1995. That's the record they're chasing. I am going to pick the guy who finished 2nd in the first race here in the new configuration and 2nd in the second race here. I don't have the car out. The number 1, I picked him before. I can't pick against him. I think Ross Chastain is going to be spiking some watermelons tomorrow. I really think he's going to get it done. He's been one of the most consistent drivers we've seen in NASCAR since the next-gen era. Great at Atlanta, great at super speedways, obviously won Talladega. Ross Chastain is going to be my pick for pick a winner.
And Robbie commented he loved your pick, Ben, going with Corey LaJoie. It's off to a good start.
Well, I know some people might be looking at the Fords right now, but Hendrick Motorsports has been so dominant Daytona 500 qualifying over the last several years. They haven't actually won the race since Dale Earnhardt Jr. did it in 2014. So sometimes, you can bring the fastest cars to these super speedway style races you want. It doesn't always work out that way once we get into a draft, and you find the best partners for you wherever you can, and work with draft the best way you can. Who knows what's going to happen. So I just got a feeling Corey LaJoie is hungry after last year. He might get the job done today.
Yeah. And for me, I'm about to make a joke about Edward as well from Formula E Zone. Look at his picks. I'm pretty sure both of us have picked Chastain and Verstappen. I'm not saying I'm picking them because of him, but if you want to climb the leaderboard, you might as well grab onto the leader's leg as he goes up. So I just want to point that out.
But you can't close the gap that way, though, Matthew. You might get the points, but the gap's going to remain the same because that'll be getting the points too.
Yeah, we got a long season to go, Ben. So hopefully I can. Last year I didn't start towards the end of the season, and I think I made it up in the top 10. So there's a couple weeks that kind of like doing the SVG effect on us, the Verstappen effect. It's going to be the Edward effect. I'm just going to go with him for this week with Chastain and Verstappen.
And we encourage everyone, be sure to comment below with who you think is going to win each race. You got up until the race starts to comment with who wins each race. We want to thank everyone, especially our Patreon subscribers, for keeping us on the air each and every week. We love doing this, but we still have bills to pay, so your support means a lot. And a big thank you to Adam Stevens for another cup of coffee. We super appreciate that. It goes far in helping us stay on the air. And a great, easy way for everybody to help us stay on the air besides investing, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Comment, like. That helps the algorithm, so that way your friends that enjoy motorsports, they can see us, subscribe, and then share the fun content, excellent news reporting that we do each and every week. We'll be back on the air tomorrow with Grid Life wrap-up, approximately 90 minutes following the conclusion of the NASCAR race. Then Ben will be back on the air with Grid Encore Monday. Be sure to check it out for all the Xfinity trucks, Formula 2, Formula 3 race coverage, recap. Then we're going to have Grid Tonight every Wednesday, your Motorsports Weekly news program. Then Friday, Women in Motorsports, where we recap and discuss some of the latest news about some of the female athletes in motorsports. And we encourage everyone to check out the newest episode of Life on the Grid. Ben and Kobe both interviewed Igor Romanov, NASCAR Wheeling Euro Series competitor, and from the Ukraine. He shares a powerful story about fleeing to Ukraine, his love for motorsports, the passion he shows for NASCAR. I think a true NASCAR fan would really enjoy seeing how much he loves this sport and wants to share it with everyone in the Ukraine. And overall, all that right here on the Grid Network on YouTube. And in the video description, don't forget to check out links to Ben Schneider and Joshua Burst's channel, as they do excellent programs there as well.
Hey, Joe, just before you sign off, I just want to echo what you're saying about that Life on the Grid episode. Definitely go check that out. I think it's one of the best episodes that Kobe and I have ever done. It's a very powerful story, so it'll be well worth your time to check it out.
Definitely check it out. And once again, for Ben Schneider and Matthew Bro, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching today's program. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.